Hello, everybody. Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 podcast. Joining us tonight from a variety of places, the founder of NBA Draft Junkies, Locked On NBA podcast as well, and also the heir to Mr. Chad Ford, Rafael Barlowe is here. We have a whole lot to get to. So many prospects in the Big 12 and beyond in the NCAA tournament to talk about. We're going to hit all of that coming up on tonight's show after, as always, our intro video.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so since the last time you and I talked, your life is now like completely different. You got married.
Yeah.
You're going to be a father.
Yeah.
And you're going to take over NBA Big Board. My guy, how are we doing? How is life? It sounds crazy, but it must be great.
I'm doing good, but man, I was bobbing my head to that intro music. I haven't heard that one before. That was nice. But yeah, man, a lot has changed, man. I mean, I think the last time we talked, I wasn't even engaged. I got engaged like right after Summer League. Then we got married. Me and my wife got married in Paris. It's not as glamorous as it sounds. It wasn't like we had this elaborate. I mean, we just got married at the Eiffel Tower. Got up at like 6 o'clock in the morning.
That's pretty good, though. That's pretty good, though.
Yeah, I mean, it was like I had planned it that way. It was cheap. Believe it or not, it was cheap. Like it's cheaper to like fly to Paris than it is like from Dallas to LA right now.
Really?
And then, you know, when you have a wedding at the Eiffel Tower, I didn't need to pay for anybody but a photographer. And that was it. So I had like these amazing photos and I saved a lot of money. Didn't pay for a venue, didn't have to pay for food, didn't have to pay for anything other than the flight to Paris, the photographer, and the hotel. And I had like these amazing photos, and it was probably less than like $2,000. So.
And you got to see all, and I mean, I think you parlayed that trip right into a little bit of some basketball too, right?
Yeah. So that same day, shout out to my wife for understanding my life. We went to a basketball game to watch the projected number one pick in 2023 play the same night we got married. So, I'm all in on this basketball thing, obviously.
Right. All right. So, the NCAA tournament's going on. And you have a focus internationally, obviously, but you cover the entire draft from all the angles.
Yep. That's why I don't sleep much.
I understand why. The games are always happening all over the place.
Yeah.
So the last time you and I talked, we had talked about Ochai Agbaji.
Yes, sir.
And you and I had we were in agreement. We're like, this probably works out better for him if he went to the league last year because he was a 3-and-D guy last year. That's what he was. And Kansas got absolutely massacred against USC, Evan Mobley and USC last year in the NCAA tournament. And it's because they didn't have a guy on the ball who could score the way that Ochai Agbaji can now score. And now it's like he's a completely different dude, Rafael. I mean, he is a totally different player. Sure, the defense is still there, some on-ball defense, the three-point shooting's there, but the off-the-ball game, he really did a good job, I thought, attacking the rim early in the season, and it allowed him to set up a lot of that movement. And also, he's one of those guys that I love the confidence he shoots with. He doesn't need much space, and I think a lot of that is also because he drives so much. You know, defenders do think twice about pressing him in a way they maybe didn't last year. Your thoughts on how far his game has come and where you see him in this draft class?
Yeah, man, he's someone that has been on my radar, obviously, since like his freshman year. And he didn't make the jump from freshman to sophomore year that I expected. Then he didn't make the jump from sophomore to junior. He got better, right? But it's almost like I have to like watch myself and say, like, is it wrong to like kind of knock a guy because he chose to get better in college as opposed to going to the NBA when he wasn't ready and trying to develop in the NBA? And Agbaji has done everything that you want a college basketball player to do. He's gotten better. He's been a great teammate. But, you know, in the NBA draft world, it's kind of like, you stayed too long. And so I have this, I wouldn't say it's a quote, but I have like this theory that if you are ranked amongst your school's all-time leaders in any category, then you probably stayed in school
Right.
too long as an NBA draft pick. And so my fear for him is that he may end up like the guy wasn't a senior, but Ayo Dosunmu from
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Illinois.
Illinois.
Everything that people wanted to see him improve on, he did, and it did not improve his draft stock. But now he's definitely outplayed where he was drafted at for Chicago, and he ended up being a steal. So, I mean, it wouldn't be surprising to me if some NBA teams overthink it because they're going to go for this sexier, less productive prospect. But I mean, the changes that he's made in his game, you can't help but notice that he's more confident. And I mean, he's like you said, the confidence, he's letting that thing fly. Like,
Yes.
it's like,
Yeah.
but you don't get that type of confidence unless you've put in the work. And it's clearly obvious that he's put in the work. And what's so amazing about him is, and I did an article in NBA Big Board about him saying that I think he could be this year's Desmond Bane, another Big 12 guy, that he could end up falling late in the draft because somebody's going to say, oh, well, he's a senior and, just kind of think that he doesn't have the same upside. But people forget that he wasn't supposed to be a Big 12 player. Like, he didn't have offers from Power 5 schools.
He was
and I
outside the top 300, I believe, when he signed with KU.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I take that into consideration that he's a late bloomer and he is getting better every year. Maybe not at the pace others have wanted him to be, but he may have played himself into the lottery, but which is weird. He still may not be the highest Kansas player drafted.
All right. But so who would that be? That's a good transition. So who would be the highest KU player drafted if it's not?
I think it could be Christian Braun. I have to make sure that I say it not how it looks.
His brother was a Missouri Tiger when I was there, and
okay.
I like you. Everybody want to say Braun, right? Y'all want to say Braun because of the way it's spelled. It is Brown, but you think there's a chance Christian Braun goes? It's got to be that athleticism, right? That's got to be what people really are drawn to for him.
Well, I mean, I don't think you can just say it's athleticism because Agbaji is a great athlete himself. So,
right,
I think it's almost like, all right, we've seen Agbaji for 4 years. We've seen almost this version of him, but even though this is Brown's 3rd year, we have not seen this version of Christian Braun. Like, he went from all catch and shoot 3 points to now he's like attacking the rim. And we knew he was a good athlete, but it's like he's really showcasing it this year, like dunking on guys. Like, I think it was like Texas Tech. He had the highlight reel dunking transition. And I just think, like, because he's younger and sometimes it just kind of works against seniors when a guy has less film to go after. I mean, I think both of them could end up being 1st-round picks. I mean, it wouldn't be surprising to me at all. But yeah, I mean, Braun has, I mean, as big of a jump that Agbaji made from junior to senior, Braun has made even a bigger jump from sophomore to junior. And I just I see both of those guys as, 10-year NBA players, guys that are like connective tissues. But I just think maybe because Braun has a smaller sample size, that it could help him in the draft world, because you know how it works. Right. Somebody way less productive and much younger than Agbaji is going to go higher than him. And I've made the case of like Shaden Sharp, the kid from Kentucky that hasn't played a single minute, is going to get drafted higher than Agbaji. And we have no idea if he can even, perform at the college level. Whether that's fair or not, that's not up to me to decide, but
that's how people look at it. It's the same way in NFL too. I mean, there was the conversation that was around Mitch Trubisky when he went to the Bears, right? And Deshaun Watson's a guy who'd been there forever, and Deshaun Watson, toasted Alabama twice, but we'd seen it before, so we decided to go with Mitch Trubisky instead of Deshaun Watson. That's how it works. I will say Christian Braun's super interesting because last year, when he was kind of emerging, coming on last year as a good player, it was a lot of feast or famine, right? It felt like it was a lot of 3, then 22, maybe one game, 4 one game and 17 the next. We'll say this year he's shooting 50% from the floor and basically 40% from 3. So, I mean, he and Ochai, I think you're right. I think I see them as safe bets. The next guy I want to get your thoughts on. So I heard Bill Simmons and Ryan Russillo talking about him, and this is a player that I loved. when Jonathan Tchamwa, Baylor's big rim running big, went out, Jeremy Sochan had this opportunity to play the 5. And people didn't get to see as much of it in the tournament because they had to exit. I mean, get to actually see a lot of them against Carolina. But this is a guy that people really are starting to come around to just because he has got this NBA fit of he's a smaller guy who can play a little bit bigger than he is. He can shoot some. He's still super raw. But when you watch him, you're like, this is an NBA player. I know what this looks like. This is a small ball 5 who is 18, 19 years old. He's well liked. He's got the hair, which is kind of a nice feature, if you want to identify him.
Which hairstyle?
Right, exactly. Yeah, right. And so if you want to identify people, like, that's a kid from Baylor who always changes hair, right? And so, some of those identified people liked him. Your thoughts on Sochan, and also give me some thoughts on Kendall Brown too, because somebody else that people seem to like as an NBA player potentially.
Yeah, so I want to say it was, let me think, maybe October, maybe the second or third day of college basketball official practices. And a friend of mine is an alum at Baylor, and I rode down to Waco to attend Baylor's practice, which, I mean, shout out to their staff. I mean, the nicest group of people.
Yeah, man.
And I remember,
Scott
like,
Jason, man.
Yeah, I actually text, like, I have quite a few friends that played for Baylor, and I text them. I said, is Drew always this nice? And they're like, always. So I'm like, who's the bad guy on the staff that yells and gets in guys' faces? And they're like, well, it's not Drew. So yeah, they my friend is an alum there, and he wanted to go to practice, and he asked, could I come along? Because I wanted to, like, watch Kendall Brown, and I was able to, like, watch the entire practice. And I talked to one of the coaches, and I'm just like, yeah, man, Kendall Brown. Like, no, that kid over there, check him out. So, I kind of put it in my notes, and I came to see Mayer and all those guys. And, I mean, I thought Brown was going to be good. I mean, yeah, Sochan was going to be good, but I didn't think he was going to be this good this fast. And so I want to say maybe like in November, I had Kendall Brown as a top 10 pick, but he's not the best prospect on Baylor, in my opinion. I'm going with Jeremy because, I mean, one of the knocks I had on Brown is his just reluctance to be assertive. And I thought, like, okay, well, he's a freshman. He's not like a guy that is a big time scorer anyway, but he's a freak athlete. He can pass the ball. He has a bunch of skills that you like. And I thought, okay, well, maybe he doesn't want to step on toes and he's just trying to fit in. But Jeremy, I think he was doing that earlier in the year, but the last few games, he's like, no, I'm the guy here. And so, I mean, I have him ahead of Brown on my latest mock, which I haven't released, but I have him ahead because I think that he brings a little bit more to the table. I mean, he rebounds. You don't have to worry about him not being assertive. Like, he's going to find ways to impact the game, whether it's his hustle, his rebounding, his defense. And then, like you said, he's still a little raw, but he shows enough flashes of offense that you're like, okay, he can turn into somebody. And so
right.
I like him a lot. I mean, I like Brown too. I don't know. Just sometimes, like, I think he only had like 10 points combined in both tournament games and more fouls than free throw attempts. And I just kind of like guys that are assertive. And I think that's why I have Jeremy ahead of Kendall right now.
He's always doing something. He's just always, like, the numbers bear this out. And it might be one steal, but like the steal is always noticeable, right? Couple blocks, but you really notice those couple blocks. And I think, he got a lot of opportunity, and look, one person's loss is somebody else's gain. I thought Jonathan Tchamwa was a really interesting NBA prospect, especially if he worked on a 3-point shot. Still wins co-defensive player of the year, which is interesting, and we'll see what happens for him. But him getting hurt was a blessing for Sochan because I was curious, okay, if anybody could turn this small ball lineup they're going to have to play without Flo Thamba into an asset, it's going to be Scott Drew. I didn't think it would be that good that fast.
Yeah,
I did not think they were going to be able to get it working as fast as they did, especially with losing LJ Crier and as inefficient of a scorer as James Akinjo is. But because of Sochan, and like we mentioned, like there are some games in there where it's 17-6, 17-5. 15 and 11, 15 and
Yeah.
9 against Norfolk State, and he was really turning it on as the season went along and off the bench playing 30 minutes in some games. So I think you're right. I think Baylor is in such an interesting spot because I think the Big 12 in general is too, because we're no longer in a space anymore where, look, we had Cade last year, right? And we've had some, Trey Young and, we've had some guys who were one and dones, but it feels like now the Big 12 is putting more interesting players into the league. And like the one thing I think we can almost like guarantee from these Big 12 guys, especially considering like where some of them play, they can all really play defense.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to see any Big 12 players coming to the league like that guy cannot stop anybody. I think about Ochai and Christian Braun. Bill Self usually, now this team's not as good at defense, but they require that. You see defense Iowa State's playing, they got them this far. Baylor, obviously, a team that's super connected on the defensive end, and Daveon Mitchell, one of the most popular players, recently that we know from the Big 12 people at the league. Nickname is Off Night, right? And so Sochan as well too is somebody like, oh, this guy's athletic, can block shots. Like that's the one thing we're starting to be able to guarantee with some of these Big 12 guys. Maybe not your one and dones, maybe not your Andrew Wiggins anymore. Sure, Cade Cunningham will kind of come along, but this is a league that's going to have like maybe older players.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. And but like, shit, man, Desmond Bain, pretty damn good, right? I mean, that guy he came in the league and he was a grown man when he came in the league and knew what his job was too.
It's funny you said that because when I was at Baylor's practice, I talked to Coach Drew, just kind of briefly. And I was asking him about some of his recruits. And he said, well, the Big 12 is such a veteran conference that you're not going to see a bunch of freshmen. He was like, you can't win the conference if you're playing a lot of freshmen. And he said, even like in today's climate, like if you recruit 5 freshmen in the class, 2 of them are probably going to transfer if they're not getting significant minutes. He's like, Kansas is a veteran team. And in order to like win the Big 12, you got to beat Kansas. So you're not going to beat the Kansas if you have too many freshmen. And I never thought of it from that point of view. It's like, all right, when you look at the Big 12, it is a conference full of juniors and seniors and guys that are just experienced. And so, like it's I mean, like you said, you have your Cades and, you have your Trey Youngs, but for the most part, you got some vets. I mean, that Baylor team last year,
old, very old.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the guys that you talked about on Baylor, LJ Crier, I'm sure you saw. Now, I'm not sure if he was dealing with an injury at that point. I don't think he was, pretty early in the season. But LJ Crier was a top, I think he was a top 100 kid, barely played. Barely played his first year, and this year gets more feature role. But like you're totally right about the league itself. Now, with that being said, are there any guys looking elsewhere in the Big 12? I know Iowa State is still left. Tyrese Hunter is somebody interesting. Maybe not this year, maybe down the line. He's the kind of player that can get in. I'm trying to think from the other teams. Oklahoma State, maybe not anybody. Matthew Meyer did himself no favors this year. That was tough to see. He had a really difficult season at Baylor. But anybody else you like from across the conference? Maybe a Taz Sherman, a Nigel Pack, who's a smaller guy, could score almost a Isaiah Thomas type guy. And I mean the newer Isaiah Thomas, not the older one. Anybody else in the conference anybody else in the conference that you like kind of moving forward?
Mike Miles. I like Mike Miles.
I'm a huge Mike Miles guy, Rafael. Tell me what you like about him.
So you know what? Here's the funny story. Like you probably have seen it as a basketball guy. There's like this YouTube video of Mike Miles when he was like 8 years old that has like 5 million views. Do you remember the video?
Yes.
If you look at that video, Cade Cunningham was his teammate.
No, oh my God. Seriously?
Yes, look at the video. So that was my first time hearing of Mike. It was like, I don't know, 2012 or 13 or something like that. Just looking at how advanced he was as a scorer. I mean, he was like mature way ahead of his years. So, I kind of like living in Dallas, I kind of like paid attention to him. And then it got to the point where other guys were passing him up. And because he had he had so much fame going viral at a young age, people started like kind of picking him apart and saying like he peaked early. And then his senior year, he had like a terrific senior year. I think he won a state championship. And he's on pace to where, you thought he would be as an NBA prospect when that video came out when he was such a young kid. So I've been following him for a while, and I think that if he can get his efficiency up,
Right.
then he has a chance. And then on one case you can look at it and say, well, he had to do a lot for that TCU team, so maybe that's why he wasn't as efficient. But he's someone that I think has a legitimate NBA shot. And then I think even coming into the season, some people thought maybe Jalen Wilson was Kansas's best prospect, and then he kind of got off to the slow start, but he's shown, some flashes after getting off to like a really hot start last year. His, I guess his red shirt freshman year, maybe it was a sophomore year.
Yeah, I think it was red shirt freshman. Well,
year. Yep.
I think the interesting thing for him is like what happens when Remy Martin's gone, Agbaji's gone, and Braun's gone, because I'm not sure about you, but I want to see him with the basketball. Like I think him with the basketball in transition is something that really interests me. And he's such good. I mean, think about how athletic that backcourt is, with Wilson, with Braun and Agbaji. I mean, it's so athletic, but I want to see it when it's kind of his keep back there. That's my question. Is that kind of what you're thinking as a draft prospect for him?
Yeah, it's a tough situation because it's like, all right, if you come back, then you have a chance to be the man.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you come back like Mayer. I think if he leaves last year, it was such a high note. You're like, okay, let me go grab him now because he's going to end up being a lock in the first round if he goes back to school. I think going back to school kind of hurt him because our expectations were so high. So I don't know what Jalen should do. I think maybe at the he should test and see, like, what the feedback is.
That's what Ochai did. That's what Ochai did too, yeah.
Yep. And so, and then maybe just work with whoever Ochai and Christian Braun worked with last summer, because I know Ochai worked with Damian Lillard's trainer, Phil Beckner. He worked with him out in Arizona. I read an article on that in The Athletic, and it kind of made sense, like, the improvements that he made. And then, so you never know what the situation could be. Another prospect is, and it seems like he's been there forever, Terrence Shannon Jr. It seems like he's
and he had the injuries this year, which was a big thing for him. He was dealing with injuries. But, yeah, I mean, you watch him and you're like, that should be an NBA player. Now, the one thing I think we can say is, we just talked about this, like, the defense, probably something that underrated because he's kind of shoehorned as their scorer, if you will. I mean, that team has got a bunch of scorers now. Like, it's kind of committee for them. But, you look at him and you're like, damn, that guy should be an NBA player. That's kind of how I feel about it when I watch him.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I mean, I think like his freshman year, you felt like, all right, he doesn't have a position, but he plays hard. I felt like he was like such a reluctant shooter his freshman year, and then he's gotten better. Like you expect him to get better. He's shooting a very respectable percentage from three. But I mean, I hope I don't get put myself in a bad situation because I do live in Texas, but I'm kind of scared of Texas Tech prospects.
Oh, they have burned a few times. They have burned out, right? I mean, Jemias Ramsey didn't work out. Jarrett Culver didn't work out.
Zire Smith.
That was the big one, right?
Pick. Yeah, so
that was a big one. Oh.
And you know what's weird about Texas Tech guys? For whatever reasons, again, I live in Texas, so hopefully I can walk around.
I'll tell you what. Hey, Rafael, the Tech fans, they'll get on your head. So
yeah. Hopefully I don't burn any bridges.
You might as well just go out there and say it now, whatever you're about to say.
It's almost like, right, like for, I live in Dallas. So Jemias was not considered a good shooter prior to going to Texas Tech. And then for whatever reasons, he shot the cover off the ball for an entire season.
Yeah.
But he didn't shoot well from the free throw line. So that's what I was trying to figure out. Like, all right, I couldn't figure it out at all. Like, is he a good shooter? But I'm like, you can't get hot for an entire season. And the way that he was letting it fly. So then you had Zire Smith, who's also from Dallas, who never took jump shots at all. He played like center in high school. Even though it was a very low volume of attempts, he was making threes at Tech. And then I think Culver had one shot well. And it's like, all right, they get to the NBA and they're not making shots. Like, is the rim bigger at home in Lubbock? I don't know what it is. So I'm kind of scared of Tech prospects in a sense. So now I got to figure out, like, all right, what if the same thing starts happening at Texas? Like, I don't know. I'm just kind
Yeah,
of
with Chris Beard doing
yeah,
that too.
being
Yeah,
silly here.
yeah,
But I think for Shannon, I mean, he's going to rebound. He's going to play hard. But I think the key for him is he going to be a knockdown shooter at the NBA level? If he is, then he's a guy that teams will love. I mean, the NBA wants wings that can be
right.
complementary players to their guys that they're paying $20-30 million to. So he could be that guy.
All right, quick break here, and we'll get your thoughts on some of the broader prospect field. Today's show is brought to you by Stat Hero. If you guys have not seen it, we had a great conversation with Jason, their CEO. It's on our YouTube channel. You guys can check it out. Jason lays it out for you. If you guys, you're gonna lose money if you bet on the NCAA tournament game straight up. It's a losing proposition. You never know who the hell's gonna win. St. Peter's gonna cost you some money. It's just gonna happen. Stuff like that's gonna happen. You're gonna bet Murray State -8. You're gonna lose, and I know that from experience. It happened to me. So guys, go check out Stat Hero. When you guys go to Stat Hero, they have like specific matchups that you guys get to do. So 3 players versus 3 players, and they might give you a situation where you're going to have players from Purdue against players from St. Peter's and so on and so forth. So individual matchups. You guys can go there right now. Use the promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% deposit match. Once again, that's promo code LOCKEDON at stathero.com for a 100% deposit match today. It's fantasy sports the way it should be played, daily fantasy. So guys, go check out Stat Hero today. All right, so Rafael, I know you haven't released your latest mock draft. So am I allowed to ask you where we're at with the top of the board? Or do we have to keep that information on the DL until your next mock draft is out?
Nah, man, this is Locked On Big 12.
Yeah, come on, the fans want to know.
I was born in the region. I'm a Big 12 guy, so of course.
So before I get you, so we'll keep teasing that down the line because that's what everybody wants to hear. But I want to know: is there anybody that got KO'd out of the tournament that you wish you maybe got to see more of, and more of in the sense of like, I think too often we watch these guys in their particular conferences, and their games get officiated a certain way. A lot of the games play out a certain way. And so maybe Keegan Murray is a good example of this, right? I wanted to see more Keegan Murray against teams like a Texas Tech. I wanted to see Keegan Murray against a Kansas. Are there any of those guys that you're like, man, I wanted to see them outside of their conference? Because I think the Big Ten guys are the guys who fall victim to this the most, just because it's such a particular style of basketball that's played there, as opposed to Big 12, where it's just a fist fight every single night. I mean, it's an absolute war in Big 12 games. And that's why you see, some of these teams, Iowa State taking out Wisconsin, for example, like just tougher than a team Wisconsin we normally think is pretty tough. So Johnny Davis, maybe Keegan Murray, anybody else you want to throw out here that you wish you got to see more of in the NCAA tournament setting.
Are you sure you're not an NBA draft guy? I mean, you're asking some real draft questions. So it looks like you
have to.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, I just kind of had a lump in my throat when you mentioned that because I had Iowa going to the Final Four. So.
You were not alone. I thought they were KU's biggest challenge to get there. And Richmond Spiders, for like 5 minutes up the road, actually call baseball games Richmond Spiders. They go in there and take them out. I mean, they out-toughed them.
Yeah, man. I even did a podcast on Locked On NBA Draft, and the headline was, "Can Keegan Murray have a Carmelo Anthony type NCAA tournament run?" And then, like within hours after releasing that, I'm like, oh. But the good thing for me is, I mean, I wanted Iowa to go far, of course, because I had them in my bracket. But once they got eliminated early, it made the NCAA tournament much more enjoyable for me because my bracket was cooked. So now I'm like, you know what? I get to actually enjoy it and not worry about my bracket because I know I'm not going to win any money in this pool.
There you
go.
Then
later on, everybody's bracket was messed up. So I haven't even looked at it. I may have a chance now.
Don't do it. Don't just close your eyes. Just close your. But I saw because I think you tweeted like, is anybody thinking about who's next year's Keegan Murray? And I think Johnny Davis was. Ironically, they're both out in the first weekend, so it's like
out of there. Yeah,
damn it. But were those two guys you wanted to see more of?
More so Murray, because I thought like, man, he had a dominant year, and it was one of those things where he got off to the hot start, and because he was like I don't know, their third or fourth option last year. You're like, okay, well, all right, he's feasting against Northwest Missouri Tech, or he's feasting
Right.
against these smaller schools. And then it's like,
Northwestern.
yeah. And then it's like, okay, he did this against a Big Ten school, and he's continuing to do it. And he averaged like 24 games for the season. And he was rebounding. He was blocking shots. And it's like, okay, he's legitimate. So I thought, just shows how much I know when it comes to like, you know, like brackets and NCAA tournament. I'm like, well, this is the type of player that can carry a team far into the tournament. I will say Iowa caught a bad deal with the refs. There was that play where it was a clear foul.
They got job. For sure.
So, yeah, they got it. Yeah, they that was unfair. And then, you know, you usually don't see that happen to a higher seeded team. So he was the main guy just for my bracket, and I just wanted to see like him carry a team far because I thought, you know, I mean, it's just such a terrible way to end a phenomenal season. He was the main guy that I wanted to see play longer. I mean, I don't think there's anybody else that even like a comparison that I'm like.
So, did you want to see Jabari Smith outside the SEC? Because the SEC got cooked in the tournament too. I think that's, you know, he and Keegan are so different, right? I mean, Keegan Murray, I think, to put it the best way, Seth Greenberg said he's scoring 25 off the bus, which is true, right? So he's kind of, it's like, all right, does Seth scoring 25 off the bus translate? For Jabari, I was kind of always like, all right, do I want to see him away from SEC games, or does it really matter? Because like he had some hit or miss games this year, like just because I think by the way he plays and how young he is. Like there are some games where he's just not going to be in it, just if he's having a bad night, because he is 18 years old and he plays like he's 6'10", plays like a wing, and also they have Walker Kessler there too, so I think that naturally kind of makes him a little bit further from the basket. Oftentimes, I feel like that was more natural. Or are you kind of with me? Where you're like, okay, I've seen what I need to see, or did you want to see him more?
Well, the thing I will say about the NCAA tournament is this. We're human, so we may overreact, and sometimes your last impression is it holds a lot of weight. And I think with the NCAA tournament, if you like a guy and he plays very well, then you're like, see, I do it. If there's a guy you're kind of iffy on and he has a bad game, you're like, see, I knew this was going to happen. So for me, I feel like I'm probably the only draft guy that hasn't had Jabari number one on their board. And one of my concerns, not saying that it's a big deal, not saying I'm not high on him, but one of my concerns is if I'm going to take a guy number one in the NBA draft, I want this to be a guy that I can say, go get me a bucket. I'm going to give you the ball, whether it's 5 seconds left on the shot clock or 5 seconds left in the game, that I can say, hey, here's the ball, go get me a bucket. I know you're going to get an easy shot, make the basket, or you're going to get fouled, or make the play. So think about Cade Cunningham. If you gave him the ball with 5 seconds left, it's either a bucket, foul, good look, or he's a shot for somebody else. So that's why I haven't been as high on Jabari Smith all season, because I know he's the youngest of the three guys that are projected to go number one, or but I felt like I don't feel comfortable that he is a shot creator or a really good passer. Now, he did average 4 assists in the 2 games that they played, but I think like one of my concerns, which I'm not going to say it holds a lot of weight, but one of my concerns about him, it was exposed when he's not knocking down jump shots and the team is playing him tight and forcing him to put the ball on the floor. How is he going to score? And so that's one of the reasons why I have Banchero ahead of him, because I feel like I can give the ball to Banchero, and I know that he's going to play bully ball, or I think he's just a better shot creator. So I was disappointed because I wanted to see Keegan Murray and Jabari Smith match up. I mean, I think I would probably guess 80% of the brackets had that matchup in place, because I mean, it's good for college basketball. You got arguably the best player in the country going against arguably the best prospect in the country, and they both went home in the first weekend. I just think that was those are probably that was the biggest matchup that didn't happen. I wanted to see Paolo Banchero and Chet Holmgren meet again, and I mean, there's still a chance that could happen. But outside of that, Keegan and Jabari was the matchup that I had circled. So Yes, those were the two guys that didn't play enough. And then I would throw Kennedy Chandler in that
Yeah.
mix too. But I never thought of it till you just mentioned it. Yeah, the SEC and the Big Ten didn't do too well in the tournament.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Like, that it happened again for the Big Ten. I will say I think Purdue's got a pretty good chance. And we'll get to Jaden Ivy here in a second. I will say, like, so I'm just going to give you these teams that are playing in the on Thursday: Arkansas, Gonzaga, Michigan, Villanova, Texas Tech, Duke, Houston, and Arizona. So I'm gonna just go through these, and we can hit these real fast. Have you seen enough Chet? Are you pretty sold, good to go on Chet, or do you need to see anything else?
I still need to see more. The reason I still need to see more is because he has some pretty interesting matchups. So the Jalen Duren one, I thought that was a matchup that I wanted to see. You got this kind of raw but physically imposing threat, and I thought
he didn't play very well, did he? Chet didn't play well.
Well, it depends. Like when I watched the game, I saw like what I saw, but then when I went on like Twitter and I like to like see what other people, it was so divided. There was a group of people that thought Chet played well because they were like, he blocked 5 shots. He showed that he can handle physicality. But then there were some people that thought like, well, he gave up a lot of offensive rebounds, and so that game was like a good game, but I don't think it kind of swayed anybody too far in either direction. He has a good matchup against Jalen Williams from Arkansas, who I think is a legitimate NBA prospect.
Yeah, he is.
So that's going to be an interesting matchup. And then if he wins and then Duke wins, now you got the matchup that I think is probably going to be as big as any Final Four game in the last few years between Gonzaga and Duke in the Elite Eight. I mean, I'm hoping that it happens. It's like Mark Williams versus Timmy, Paolo versus Chet.
Man, you're really upsetting the Red Raider fans because that's the matchup for Duke, right?
Oh man, they're gonna hate me now.
I will say this. That game is so intriguing to me because they are going to absolutely maul Bankero. I mean that's what this defense does is, and look, it's that no middle defense, right? I mean, it's you're going to have to shoot over it. And so I actually think it's a really good test for Bankero. It's like, what does this look like? What is you going up against a defense that we know is elite look like? I think it's a great challenge. I'm super pumped. I will say I can understand why everybody wants to see Bankero versus Chet again too.
And it might work in Texas Tech's favor because they might be looking ahead.
Right. Yeah.
And so, and I felt like even when they made this bracket, it was like they gave Chet and they like literally just –
they set it up, didn't they?
Yeah, it was. I mean, very interesting. But yeah, I mean, I think that. I want to see more out of Chet. I want to see, like, again, I'm a guy that if I'm gonna take you number one, I want to see if you can give me a bucket when you need. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think either way, he's gonna defer to Timmy. I think Timmy is the better college player anyway, and obviously he's the better scorer of the bunch. So, I mean, like. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Like I wanted to tweet this out, and it's like, has there been a time in recent memory where we've seen a guy go number 1 in the draft, but he's not the best college player on his team?
I'm trying to think of it like recently. I feel like it's a really good question. Yeah, I can't think of any in recent memory where it's happened.
Only one I can think of maybe, and it's a debate. It was Chris Douglas Roberts and Derrick Rose. I think CDR was first team All-American that year.
Right.
And maybe Marvin Williams didn't go number 1, but he didn't start. He came off the bench for North Carolina that year. But yeah, I can't think of a situation where a guy was not the clear-cut best player on his team, and he went number 1 in the draft. So
yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this list, like, all the way down. I mean, Kyrie probably was, he just didn't get to play enough. I think you could have a conversation about John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins. I think I'll give Wall the edge, but I mean, that's one of those where like one is a fat center and one is a quick point, because Boogie was a little thick at that point in time. And so
that was more so character issues with Cousins.
Yes.
So,
yeah. See, I think it's a great conversation because then once you get to that list, then you start going to a lot of the high school guys and the foreign guys. So yeah, I'm looking at this list and I think you're right. I think that's that's an interesting conversation to have. Another guy I want to hear your opinion on. because you mentioned Mike Miles, and I thought about that game the other night they played against Arizona. I'm not sure if you saw it.
Yep.
Benedict
Oh yeah,
Mathurin,
I was
man.
up super late.
Oh my God. How good was that dude? They were just like, look, we need you are our best player. We need you to take over a game. He took over a game. And once again, you mentioned a great point with the don't let this stuff confirm your biases in an NCAA tournament setting. But that's if you're a Ben Mathurin guy, it's pretty hard not to be like, holy hell, that was really impressive.
Yeah. And I mean, I had him as a top 10 pick. Now, you have to ask yourself, all right, if he has a couple more games like that, can he, creep into inside? I mean, I always thought that he was NBA ready at the minimum as, just 3-and-D athlete that, can finish in transition. But I mean, he came up big. He came up clutch. And that's one of the things I look for in the NCAA tournament because it's one win or go home. So I want to see like who is ready for the moment. Who
wants the ball? Who
wants the ball? Even if you're like not making the shots, who is like again not deferring and not afraid of the moment. And so Mathurin really he impressed me with that. Even like his teammate Koloko. I thought like big game, season on the line, your two best prospects showed up. And I mean that means something to me.
All right, and then get some thoughts quickly here on the teams. We already talked about some of these guys, but Jaden Ivy. So does it feels like if we were to look back on this draft and be like, why was this player not number one? You could totally disagree with me here, but that's the guy I'm looking at. Yeah. He is the guy, and I think everybody's kind of we're living in the Ja Morant age, so we're talking like
some money.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing about when I watch Jaden, I'm like, he is fearless. His team is a little different of a team because they have Travion Williams and Zach Edey, who are both, these really interesting big men.
Throwbacks.
They're just complete throwbacks, right?
Yeah.
But unlike the other Big Ten their counterparts, it's actually working for Purdue, and it's working the tournament for them. And I think a big reason why is because they've got Jaden Ivy, who just feels like he could be this destroyer in the NBA. Is he the guy you think we look back on if he doesn't get number one and be like, this should have been the pick? I feel like he's the guy I think of in that situation.
Yeah, so I'm actually working on an article, and it should come out by the time this airs, is that I think Jaden Ivy, if he can win a couple more games, may have an outside shot at being the number one pick. With Jabari's gone. So not saying that, that's going to affect his draft stock, but if Jabari,
but chances to impress are gone, right? Jaden Ivy still got chances to impress.
He still has chances, especially if he can go to the Final Four, the national championship game, and go to the foul line 9 times and just wreak havoc with his speed. I think that he does have a chance. And like you said, we're living in the Ja Morant era. I think the NBA is a copycat league, and everyone is already having a hard time finding someone to compare Chet to. Then when you look at who Jabari is being compared to, it is guys that aren't necessarily in the NBA right now, from Chris Bosh to Rashard Lewis. And then Paolo, I mean, even like some of the best comparisons I've seen are like Julius Randle and Tobias Harris. Now, when you look at Jaden Ivy, the only guy that you can compare him to is one of the hottest players in the league, maybe even a young Westbrook. And so
that one too, with young Westbrook.
Yeah, so it's like if he leads Purdue to the Final Four, he might have an outside chance because, I mean, that dude is so fast. When I was watching the game, the court looked too small for him. It looked like he was having to force himself to hit the brakes, so he's going to run out of real estate. And the only thing I could compare it to was watching Devin Hester on a kickoff return, how it's like that burst from by the time he caught it. And that just seems like that's how fast Ivy is. He might actually be, I mean, at the minimum, top 5 fastest guys in the world with the ball in his hands within 94 feet. And with that type of pressure that he puts on the rim, and he's doing this playing with two guys that were born in the wrong era. I think if Trevion Williams was born in 1979 or 1983, he is a top 5 pick. Zach Edey, not saying he's Yao Ming, but he looks like
that's Yao Ming. Yeah,
and
right.
Yao was the number 1 pick in whatever year that was. So Zach Edey is a top 10 pick if this is 2002 instead of 2022. So Ivy is doing this with two guys that do not space the floor. Imagine what he looks like in the NBA with more spacing and so I said I have to say this. He could like be this disruptor and end up, moving up draft boards. And I mean, I think it's going to take like a gutsy GM because, maybe like it may not be the best positional fit, but someone like Sam Presti, who's not afraid to think outside the box. I mean, I do think some teams are going to be like, yeah, I mean, the consensus is one of these bigs, but yeah, I mean, I think Jaden Ivy has a shot, and he's incredible. He's
fun to watch. It's real. It's and that's what we want. And the thing is, like, they get St. Peter's this week. I mean, the St. Peter's guards are really tough. I actually think it's a good matchup for him, but it's one of those where it's like blow them away. You should blow them away. Like, they're tough. They're good players. We just saw them. They really did play. I thought they played Xavier Wheeler off the floor against Kentucky. I mean, he was horrible in that game, and they did a really good job against Murray State as well too. But like, this is a challenge for Jaden Ivey, and I think he should blow him away. I will say the one guy does remind me of a little bit. I remember when De'Aaron Fox went up against Lonzo in the tournament, and it was just like
that was like personal.
As good as Lonzo is, man, it's like De'Aaron Fox is just faster than him, and that's the thing. Is like Jaden Ivey is just majority of the time he's just faster than you. He's gonna have a better first step than you. And
it's the competitive fire that he has. Like
I'm going to get to the rim. I'm going to get to the rim.
And I think that's the difference between him and some other guys. Like he's the type of guy that I think a tournament is set up for him to will a team to victory because he is such a fierce competitor.
All right, so I'll give you some of these and anybody else in the rest of these teams because it's kind of a eclectic, weird group here. Providence, Kansas, Carolina, UCLA, Iowa State, and Miami. If you have anybody from that group of teams that you'd like to talk about, please let me know. I love the UCLA guys so much. I hope Tiger Campbell becomes a backup point guard in the NBA. I think because he protects the ball so well, I'd like to give him a chance. And also his shooting has gotten a lot better. But Hawkes, Juzang, Brockington on Tyrese Hunter on Iowa State, Charlie Moore, the guy who played on 12 different teams in 3 years somehow in college. Anybody, dealer's choice here, Rafael, any of those guys, who are you most excited to watch?
I'm going to throw out a name that you didn't mention, Isaiah Wong. He had the big dunk on Jabari. Okay. Fellow Locked On host, Locked On NBA Draft host, Richard Stamen has had Isaiah Wong in his top 40 for 3 years now. So I know that was kind of like his I told you so moment. Let's just see if he can keep the momentum. Like he has everyone's attention right now. Let's see if he can, carry the momentum from the Auburn win over. Charlie Moore, you're right, man. I feel like, man, did he play with Sharif Abdul-Rahim? Or was he in Jalen Brown's recruiting class?
No, I think he actually was. I'm almost positive that Charlie Moore was on. I saw that team play like way back when it was when they played. I was at school and I saw him play. That dude has been in college forever. It is absolutely crazy. Anybody else?
Let me think.
Brady Manick.
Yeah. You talk about somebody that was sweating bullets.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think is Brady Manick what we like kind of wish Matt Meyer was? I know he's not as athletic as Matt Meyer, but
I
like
thought of it from that perspective. Yeah.
Like, I think we kind of we're he's just nailing threes. You guys had a couple 25-point games. I think he's the one who smoked Duke in that's the second game. Like I kind of think
K's.
I loved which I love. I was a huge fan of that. I'm not sure about you. Okay. I kind of feel like Brady Manick market corrected Matt Meyer. He was like, no, this is what you were supposed to be. Not as good of an athlete though. I gotta get that.
Yeah, I really never thought of it from that perspective. I mean, man, I was the whole game. I'm trying to watch the game and enjoy it, but in my mind, I'm thinking like, man, if North Carolina loses this league, I hope he has already moved off campus.
Yeah, yeah, that was bad. That was real bad. All right,
But
one more. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I'd say maybe Tyrese Hunter. Like he had
Yeah,
a lot of momentum in the first round game. He had like 7
LSU
threes. It
game.
was probably like
Yeah,
an outlier performance because he didn't shoot well from 3 all season. And then maybe the pressure of playing in his hometown kind of got to him, but
yeah,
he did win against the school that he decided to not go to in his own backyard. If he can have a bounce back game, he's kind of been getting a little bit of buzz as a guy who, if he plays well enough, he could play himself into position for this year's draft. So I mean, he's someone that I like to watch out for. But Brockington is a guy like, is he a senior, if I'm not mistaken?
yeah. So he was at I forget what the COVID whatever he was, junior or senior. So
It's weird now because some guys have decided
right.
like
You
were
got no
junior
clue
last year.
Right. You have no clue what year they are.
Yeah.
Brockington's interesting. He might be the guy he's not going to go as high as Desmond Bain, but he feels like the Big 12 guy that might get the attention in the NBA because he's a really good rebounding guard.
Yeah.
He was a second leading rebounder. Ironically enough, Mark Smith from Kansas State was the leading rebounder, who's also a guard. But Brockington, he's got a funky shot, which I think might, obviously pull some people away, but he's a scorer. He can score. Like, I think that guy is actually a legit second unit type guy in the NBA. So I think it's a good call with him too. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think at the minimum he's played himself into like the combine and he'll get a chance to work out in a combine type setting. So
yeah,
I mean, he's done well for himself.
All right, one more quick word from our sponsors, and I kept you way too long, but I have to get your thoughts on the top of the board. Today's show is brought to you by BetOnline and BetOnline.net. You guys can go there today, check out all the odds they have. I'm sure they have NBA draft odds as well. You guys can find those odds there. You guys can find college football futures, college basketball odds, NFL, NBA, Formula One, UFC, NASCAR, boxing. All that stuff's available there at BetOnline and BetOnline.net today. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. All right. So if you are who's supposed to be number one pick right now? Who has the worst record in the NBA at this point? Is it Detroit or yeah, Houston's pretty bad. So if you're Houston today, who are you taking number one? Can you share that with us? Can you give the Locked On Big 12 listeners right now on your big board who's number one?
Paolo Banchero.
Really?
Yeah, man. I've been riding this Banchero bandwagon all season. It's so I'm going to live and die on that hill, and he made me look good against Michigan State because I feel like Duke is one of those schools, either you like Duke or you don't like Duke. So if you're a Duke prospect, you kind of fall into that situation. Right. I think if Paolo had the same game as Jabari had, he would be getting roasted all over social media. So I was nervous. Like, all right, if he has a bad game, my mentions are going to be – they're going to be in shambles.
Well, I think you might be in for a rough night then on Thursday because Texas Tech can do that to you. So I'm just telling you.
But he's the one guy that I feel like he has the physicality to handle getting beat. I feel like if Chet went against those bruisers they got there, that's not the best situation for him. Maybe even the same with Jabari. Maybe I'm a little bit biased because I'm, again, riding this Banchero bandwagon. But I feel like if there is one of the top guys that is physically built to handle what Texas Tech has to offer, it is him. So Texas Tech fans, don't come at my head because I know I haven't been the best.
Rough podcast for you and your brother in West Texas in this one, the boys from out there. All right, Rafael. Thank you so much for your time. Number one, where can people find you and your work and all of its variety? Tell us where people can get more of your NBA draft content.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. It's always a great time when I'm on your show.
Love it.
I don't know what the limit is. I know for Locked On NBA Draft, they want me to do 30, and we're
don't worry. Hey, we can split these up into multiple episodes. The folks get double the Rafaels. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's always like, I mean, I just feel like we have such great chemistry, and I enjoy coming on your show. So thank you for having me on.
Always.
But yeah, you can find me at Barlowe, BARLOWE 500 on Twitter. NBA Draft Junkies is my website. You can also find some of my videos on NBADraftJunkies.com. And now with my new position, it still hasn't really hit me yet. I am the director of scouting, and actually the successor to the great chat for that NBA Big Board. So I have content there at the minimum 3 times a week. And then I have the Locked On NBA Draft where I'm on every Monday and Thursday covering the draft. So if you like the NBA Draft, I got a lot of content for you. I think I may have bit off more than I can chew because I'm spending a good chunk of the season in Europe scouting international prospects. And I've just kind of taken on so many roles as doing multiple episodes, doing podcasts, then creating content, and then video is kind of like what is my thing. It kind of like maybe separates me a little bit because I create my own video content. And so that's what I'm doing for NBA Big Board also. So now I'm like writing articles, I'm doing videos and doing podcasting. So I have a lot of content out there for you if you just really, really love the NBA draft. So that's where you can find me at.
Awesome. Rafael Barlowe, we appreciate your time, man.
No problem. Thank you so much.